Hi, and welcome to another Anatomy Made Simple video. In this video, I'm going to briefly discuss the blood supply of the gut. Before we can talk about that blood supply of the actual gut, we need to understand how the GI tract is divided according to its embryological origins into three sections. These are the foregut, the midgut, and the hindgut, and these are shown in this picture here. Essentially, the foregut extends from the esophagus all the way up to the mid-duodenum, and it includes the liver, the pancreas, and gallbladder, as well as the intestines and the stomach. The midgut includes the latter part of the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum, as well as early parts of the colon, namely the cecum, the ascending colon, and the first two-thirds of the transverse colon. The rest of the colon, all the way up to the rectum, makes up the third part, which is the hindgut. Each section is supplied by a separate arterial trunk coming off the main vessel in the abdomen, the abdominal aorta. This is a large artery that comes from the heart and is a continuation of the thoracic aorta, which comes down towards the abdomen. The foregut is supplied by the celiac trunk, the midgut is supplied by the superior mesenteric artery, the SMA, and the hindgut is supplied by the inferior mesenteric artery, the IMA. The levels at which each of these branch are illustrated here, along with some other key abdominal vessels. The celiac trunk is the largest of the three trunks, and the largest of all vessels coming off the abdominal aorta. This essentially gives off three primary branches that split further. Different textbooks will give different descriptions of how this initial trifurcation occurs, and in reality there's a wide range of anatomical variation with the celiac, but also with the SMA and with the IMA. So I think it's best just to consider that in the case of the celiac trunk, each of the three branches comes off separately. The smallest branch is the left gastric artery. This travels towards the left and supplies the lesser curvature of the stomach. The splenic artery travels towards the spleen, so it also travels to the left, but this travels behind the stomach. As it travels along, it supplies branches to the pancreas and to the greater curvature of the stomach, before finally supplying the spleen. The hepatoduodenal artery is the largest of the three branches, and this supplies the liver, the gallbladder, and the duodenum through a variety of different arteries. And in the description of this video, I'll go into more detail on this if you would like to know what those branches are. Whereas the celiac artery supplies the multiple organs of the foregut, as I've just described, the SMA and the IMA mainly supply bowel. Their branches are therefore relatively simple compared to those of the celiac artery. The SMA gives off four branches, and these each supply a different region, as shown in this picture. The intestinal arteries supply the most proximal aspect of the midgut, so they supply the ileum and the jejunum. The ileocolic arteries supply the ileum, which is part of the small intestine, and the cecum, which is part of the large intestine. The right colic artery supplies the ascending colon, and the middle colic artery supplies the transverse colon. The SMA does have a fifth branch, and this is an inferior pancreatico-duodenal artery, and this supplies the head of the pancreas and the inferior duodenum via two branches, the anterior and posterior branches of this artery. I thought it would be useful to put this in, as this is the only non-colic branch of the SMA. The inferior mesenteric artery comes off a lot lower than the other two arteries, at L3. This is simple to understand as it only has three branches, and each of these only supply the colon. The left colic artery supplies the distal part of the transverse colon and the descending colon. The sigmoid artery supplies the sigmoid colon, as the name will suggest, and the superior rectal artery supplies the upper two-thirds of the rectum. The remaining lower third of the rectum is supplied by the inferior rectal artery, which derives from the internal iliac circulation rather than the abdominal aorta itself. It's quite important to know that there's a large extensive collateral circulation between the different vessels, and it's especially important with the branches of the SMA and the IMA. These are clinically relevant because they allow us as clinicians to maintain the supply of part of the bowel even when its primary blood supply is lost. For example, if the right colic artery is thrombosed or it's surgically removed, the other branches of the SMA could supply its territory. There are several key points of collateralization that are notable and I'd like to point out. One is called Griffith's point, which links the SMA and the IMA territories across the transverse colon. There is also Sudek's point, which links the IMA and the internal iliac artery territories across the rectum, so where the superior and the inferior rectal arteries are located. So to summarise this video, I've given a very brief account of how the gut is supplied almost wholly by 3 arterial trunks coming off the abdominal aorta. Knowing the basic structure of these trunks and their primary branches, as they are found in most people or how they are depicted in textbooks, would suit students very well for exams. However, I think it's worth bearing in mind that in real clinical practice, these patterns can vary quite greatly, and there's a great deal of literature that covers this. I think it's quite important to be aware that what you see in the textbook, not just in this case but with many aspects of medicine and anatomy, are not necessarily going to be reflected in the patients that you see. The description of this video contains more detail on the arterial supply of the gut, and what I've described in the video is, as I said, quite superficial. Please feel free to leave any comments if you have any questions that aren't answered by either this video or the description, and please leave suggestions for any topics that you might like me to cover. Finally, please leave some feedback on how I can improve my channel, leave a like on the video, and subscribe for more videos. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.